Welcome to the Raise Podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We're here to raise your confidence and inspire your creativity. Each episode, we will have a different guest who will be discussing our Raise word. The Raise word is a word that will encourage you or empower you and at times inspire you to explore the word a little more for yourself. Well, hello and welcome to the Raise Podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. Those of you that listen on a regular basis will know that at this point in the introduction, I will talk about the Raise word that we're going to do, and then I will introduce our guest. So the Raise word this week is brave, and the guest is me. I have to say that it's going to take a bit of bravery to do this because having a guest means that the conversation can flow. I like having a conversation. I like being able to talk to somebody. But we felt that this time it would be good for me to talk a little bit about my story. I'm going to share some poems with you as well. So it should be fairly easy to really listen to, and I want it to be something that's for you. So that when you listen to it, and hopefully listen to it over and over again, it encourages and empowers you to be brave. We always start the podcast by asking what the word brave means to you, and so I'm not going to be any different in that regard. I asked the Raise community group on Facebook what being brave meant to them, and here are a few thoughts. Someone said feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Somebody said being brave is doing something that is right, but you know it will bring its own set of challenges. Someone else said facing up to something you find frightening. As I prepare to talk to you today on this podcast, I'm looking outside and the sky is turning black. One of the things that I used to be most afraid of is thunder. When I was a little girl, we had a toilet that was separate to the rest of the rooms in the house, and every time it thundered and lightning, I would sit in that toilet, door shut, light on so that the fan was working so I couldn't hear anything. I'd often take 2 or 3 books in with me, and I'd just sit there so woe betide anybody that needed to go to the toilet. I don't think I was very brave at all. In fact, I don't feel very brave, even now. I think sometimes people think that when you do a podcast, you've got to be brave, you've got to be confident. Surely it's something that you don't have a problem with. But can I tell you now, sitting here, it's very vulnerable. It's very vulnerable just talking to you, hoping that you're still listening, that you're still wanting to hear what I've got to say. I think for me, being brave is the standing. It's the being prepared to do it, no matter how difficult it might be. There's a wonderful part in the Bible about putting on the armour of God, and it talks about the whole armour. Helmet of salvation, a breastplate of righteousness, all the way down to the shoes of the readiness of the gospel. But there's a bit afterwards that I didn't understand for a long time. It says you put on the armour of God and stand, and then you stand. And I didn't get that for a long time. And then suddenly one day it clicked. It's in the standing that the bravery comes. You see, everybody could put on the armour of God. Maybe you don't want to put on armour. Maybe you would just get dressed like you would on a normal day. Everybody can get dressed, but it's the standing. It's the saying, here I am, on the front line. I'm ready for whatever comes my way. I like to have a good Google and look at what the Google definition of brave is. And one of them says, ready to face and endure danger or pain, showing courage. Another says it's to endure or face conditions, unpleasant conditions or behaviour without showing fear. This, for me, is bravery. And I don't feel very brave. And yet I think I've been through many circumstances where I've ended up standing on the front line saying, this is really difficult. I'm going to do it anyway. One of the first times that I found this bravery in action was when I was at school. I was a primary school teacher, and I was in my very first year of the primary school teaching, and I found it incredibly difficult. I found that on the whole, the staff were lovely, but the head teacher was really unkind to me, and she used to say that I had to be whipped into shape. What you don't want in your very first year of teaching, when you're teaching in a school that's in special measures and you have a head teacher who's really unkind, is to find out that Ofsted are coming. But Ofsted came. Actually, what happened was just before Ofsted came, my head teacher pulled me aside and said, Carol, I think that I want you to go off sick while Ofsted are here. I'd had a breakdown about 4 months previously, but I knew that I was better and stronger than ever, and I knew that to say that I was sick wasn't true. So I battled with a head teacher and I said to her, I can't do that because I'm not sick anymore, and I need to be there for Ofsted. Those teachers among you listening now must think that I'm crazy. Nobody wants to be there for Ofsted, but I knew that it was important. And do you know what happened? Because I stood there on the front line and I was ready to show exactly what I could do, I ended up getting some good marks. Now that was amazing for the head teacher to see. There was no way on earth that that really should have happened in the state that I was in as a teacher, but it was a very big confidence boost for me as well. I didn't feel brave. Oh my goodness me, did I not feel brave? But I did do it anyway. I said at the beginning that I was going to share some poems, and I've written poems and songs for a long, long time. I think the first time I wrote a poem was when I was about 5. It wasn't very good, and I'm not going to share it, I'm afraid. But I found that poetry really helped me to understand how I was feeling. When I was little and things were going wrong in my family, I used to go to the park and I used to sit on the swings and write songs. It just made me feel a little bit safe. I didn't know that I was being brave, but I knew that I was learning things that were going to make me brave. What do you have that makes you brave? I'm sure there are things that maybe you can identify straight away that help you to feel brave. And maybe there are things that you haven't realised yet. One of the times that I wrote poems was when I first had COVID. I mean, the thing about COVID was it wasn't just me, was it? It was everybody. And it's still going on. How did you feel through that first time? The thing was that although I was feeling unwell, I actually felt in a very safe space. I kind of liked the fact that I didn't have to go out. Now, you know that I love people and I love talking to people. But sometimes just not having to do anything really creates a safety. I wasn't feeling that I needed to be brave, but I knew that there was a time when I was going to need to be brave again. And it really got me thinking about what I could do while I had that space to just be. This poem's come out of that. See what you think. Second chance. If you've bought a lot of things, now's the time to share. Sending memes of being kind, now's the time to care. Got a lot of papers, now's the time, go through them. Made a list of undone tasks, now's the time to do them. Sorries to say, broken dreams, now's the time to mend them. Words that should have been sent before, now's the time to send them. Thought you couldn't live without it, now's the time to try. Just don't know that much about it, now's the time, ask why. Got a chance to heal the world, now's the time to heal it. Never felt much love before, now's the time to feel it. Always stood in the darkness, Now's your time to dance. Thought it was all just a little too late. Now's our second chance. At the time, that poem brought me great hope. And my fear is that as I read it out now, we're just aware that things have gone back to, in inverted commas, normal. We don't need to do those things now. That time has passed. We just need to move on. But what out of those things do you need a little bit of bravery for? Are there words that you still need to say to somebody? Is now the time to send them? Have you got a load of papers that are actually cluttering your mind as well as your office? Is it going to take a bit of bravery to go through them? Now that might sound crazy to some of you, but to others, you know how much courage it takes to sit with a pile of papers and have to really think about how they get filed. You have to look at figures, you have to look at the responsibility that you have and really make an effort to work through that pile of papers. For some people, that takes bravery. Thought you couldn't live without it. What is it that maybe you know that you can't live without? What would happen if you tried? These are all challenging things, but those of you that listen to the podcast will know that I'm no stranger to challenge. I'm going to take you back to another poem that I wrote while I was going through the beginnings of long COVID. And this was a real challenge for me because as I became unwell, I started to identify with my mum, who was also unwell throughout most of my childhood. My mum passed away about 9 years ago now, and there were all kinds of things that made my mum mum. But at the time, I didn't really get it. As a child, I was bullied because she was going through so many different things, and I responded in a very grown-up way, which for a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, other children didn't understand. Here's the poem that really helped me to come out of a little bit of that misunderstanding. It's called Now I Get It, Mum. You would call me to the garden, proud of all that you had done. I'd just shrug, not really bothered. Now I get it, Mum. Making beds made all the difference. I just saw it as no fun. Sometimes now, that's all I manage. Now I get it, Mum. In your bed, alone each morning, you would pray till you were done. Sometimes I thought this was selfish. Now I get it, Mum. You loved space and peace and wisdom. Time alone meant things got done. I thought time with me just drained you. Now I get it, Mum. People saw the things I couldn't. I thought I had got you wrong. They saw strength and love and mercy. Now I get it, Mum. I know that when I put that on Facebook, it really resonated with people. And it takes bravery to be in a family. You can't choose who you're brought up by. And we have all had so many different experiences. And I know those of you who are listening, a lot of you have had painful experiences, situations where you shouldn't have had to be brave, but you had to do it anyway. Well done. Well done, because if you're listening to this, you're still here and you made it. You made it through those situations. You might have felt that you made it by the skin of your teeth, clawing along, but you made it. So well done. You have been brave. Family is an important place to learn bravery. And I found that family also taught me my love of humour and comedy. I used to love and still do talking to my brother about fun things that we could do together and scripts, and it just gave things a little bit of joy and a bit of lightness. And so I want to share a poem with you that hopefully does that for you too. Family is an important place to learn to be brave. And I learnt to be brave in lots of different ways. One of them was just chatting with my brother. We used to write comedy sketches together and make each other laugh. We still do. It's a lovely way to be brave. Have you ever thought about actually enjoying being brave? Finding ways that you enjoy standing and being prepared to go into the difficult thing. I remember one situation where I was so scared. I was so scared because I was going into a situation where potentially I was going to be told that I couldn't do one of the things that I loved the most. And do you know what somebody said to me? Carol, pretend that they're all singing to you. Pretend that everything they're saying is a song. My goodness me, did that help me to be brave? And the meeting wasn't as bad as I thought. Who do you know that makes bravery that little bit easier? Who do you know that stands and stands again? Who inspires you? Who raises your arms? You know, that's about being brave. The whole idea of raise is very much centered around another part in the Bible, where one of the characters in the Bible, Moses, is wanting to win a battle. But the problem was, he was exhausted. Anyone listening exhausted? Maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're simply a human being. Life is exhausting, isn't it? Well, Moses was exhausted, beyond exhausted, and he could no longer do anything. And God said to him, Moses, all you need to do is raise your arms and you will win the battle. Simple, right? Just raise your arms. Can I tell you that living with long COVID, sometimes, some days, it's really difficult just to raise my arms. Well, I don't think Moses had long COVID, but he did have two very, very close family members. And one of them stood on each side of Moses and they raised his arms for him. You see, they knew that he was needing to win the battle, and they knew that him winning the battle would mean that they would also win the battle, and so they raised his arms. And he was victorious. Who do you know that could raise your arms? Raise is something that I am so passionate about, and what I want to do is be able to raise your arms through the podcast, through the choir, through anything else that God calls me to do in the future. I'm here to raise your arms. We need each other. I've said it before and I will say it again. Raise is a community. Community. Unified together. We can be brave together. If you're in a situation at the moment where you don't feel brave, reach out. Let someone else raise your arms for you until you're victorious. One of the biggest challenges to date with me being brave is living with long COVID. It's nothing like I've ever experienced before. When I said that I couldn't lift my arms, I really couldn't. Somebody today, when I posed the question, how do you know that you're brave, said, I get up in the morning. How many of you find that that's the most difficult thing to do? Just to get up in the morning. Physically, for me, at the moment, I find it difficult to stand up straight away. I can't. If I stand up straight away from sitting down, the chances are I'm going to fall over. It's one of the conditions I've got at the moment. So I have to just sit there and wait and then stand up. It's that bit that I'm really learning to manage. that waiting before even standing, that living with long COVID. And I wrote this poem about 2 years in, and I'm about 2.5 years in now, so it's about 6 months ago. And it's called Living with Long COVID. I'm living with long COVID. It turned up uninvited. It made its home in every room. I can't say I'm delighted. I'm living with long COVID. It's messy and uncouth. I'd say it's not that big a deal. It wouldn't be the truth. I'm living with long COVID. It tried to take my voice. It's got away with such a lot. But here I have a choice. I can surrender to its scheme, be silenced by the why. I can be smothered by the pain. I could lay down and die. But I'm living with long COVID. I'm living every day. And while it's part of who I am, I choose to live today. How many of you are just hanging on? You're just living. Well done. It's brave. It's brave to live. Every day things get that little bit more difficult and you become that little bit more brave. I hope you're not living with long COVID. I know that sadly some of you are, but you are living with something. You could say it now. I'm living with a toxic relationship. I'm living with cancer. I'm living with a situation that I've no idea how to get out of. Everybody's living with something. But you're living with it. You're choosing to keep going. Well done. You're brave. You're really brave. I think I'm going to finish in a minute. I hope that this has been helpful for you. I hope it's given you a little bit of an idea of some of my story, of the reason why I do raise, of some of my poems and the way that I respond creatively. I hope that it's made you feel a little bit more brave. And now we come to the part of the podcast where I have to be really brave. The part where I share a poem. You know, the last time I shared a poem with a guest, they gave me applause. I'm not going to applause myself, but I am going to say a poem now, on the spot, as it comes. So, as I often say, bear with. I'm going to take a small breath. Be brave. Who could you save? Who can you see that standing on the front line, everything's not fine and they need your help? Whose arms could you raise? Who could you make better days for just by being you? You know, that's brave. Standing up and being counted, seeing the troubles that have mounted and still living with whatever it is that's going on, saying, I am going to be strong, hoping to put the armour on, and even if it doesn't fit, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to be brave. I want to say thank you to God. He's the one that gives me those poems. He's the one that gives me my bravery. He's the one that gives me the ability to get up when I'm not feeling well and do an episode like this, because I know that you're important. And I know that people listening today need bravery. And I know that people listening today need to be okay because other people need them too. I know that people listening today have got abilities and strengths and gifts. I know that this world needs you. Thanks for listening. Next episode, we'll be back to guests again. I hope that this has been a blessing to you all. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Raise podcast. We hope you feel raised and inspired by this episode. Whilst we're not offering face-to-face classes currently, we are doing online singing lessons where you can have your voice raised as well as your confidence. If you would like to find out more, please visit our website at www.raiseforall.com or find us on social media on either our Facebook or Instagram page. Take care.